Okay, good evening. Sorry we're running a couple minutes late there. We would like to open up the meeting with a silent meditation followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Mr. Paizo, do we have any changes to the agenda tonight?
Yes. A few, Mr. Knowles, and give me 1 second if you would, just to...
Yeah.
One came in this morning, so I don't have a hard copy of it, but let me see if I can pull it up here. There we go. In regard to items number 5 and 6, which are the zoning ordinance for commercial district accessory uses and the final amended land development plan for Echo Bensalem, which is the giant shopping center, received correspondence dated today, November 12, from council representing Echo Bensalem, requesting that the both the hearing on the ordinance and the zoning and the land development application, which are tied together, both be tabled to a date certain of the council meeting of December 16, 2019. They have granted the township an extension of time under the MPC for consideration of the land development plan. Of course, the ordinance isn't subject to those same constraints. So if council is of a mind, items 5 and 6 could be tabled to your council meeting of December 16.
Do you know what the request is based on for the delay?
I do not. It may have been as simple as a conflict. I'm not sure. Scheduling
I'm just
conflict.
not sure,
But
do they need zoning relief first before they come to council?
I think at the end of the day, whether they need zoning relief or not will be precipitated by how council acts on item number 5. If you are amenable to the change in the text of the township zoning ordinance, then that would take away the need for a variance for that particular application.
For the application, but other issues on the land development plan that might need to be addressed?
I don't believe so. I could be mistaken in that regard, but I don't know that there is anything other than that. Now, again, if there are other aspects of the application that may need zoning beyond the change in the accessory use, that may or may not be the case. I don't know, Councilman Sloan. I can only go by what was requested of the council for this evening.
Okay.
Aren't they
Mr.
requesting-
Gantz, you had noted that they have a parking variance issue, correct? So they would have to have that addressed prior to council weighing
Yeah,
in.
it said they might have to update their parking
I think they maybe
variance
expand the variance.
because it goes down to 233 with the...
Right.
Perhaps, but
improvement.
that would be a dimensional variance as opposed to a use variance, so they may want to see first how council acts on the question of the use variance, and they may be able to, otherwise get rid of the dimensional variance if they're not going to need a use one. If they have to go to the zoning hearing board anyway for a use variance, then in for a penny, in for a pound, go and get a dimensional variance as well. So I think how they intend to proceed in its entirety is likely going to be premised on how council acts on item number 5.
But aren't they asking us to change the zoning to accommodate this specific
The use, yes.
development use?
Yes.
The not change the zoning of the property, but to change what is permitted in the township's GC commercial district, and specifically whether gas pumps, gasoline pumping facility would be, whether the council would be amenable to making that a permitted use or a permitted accessory use to a grocery store.
So this would affect all grocery stores that are now in existence?
Conceivably, or at
And
least
any-
those that are located in properties that are zoned GC, general commercial,
50,000.
and 50,000 square feet.
I think Mr. Gantz's comment had to do with, they had received a zoning variance for parking because they were short to begin with, and now the pumps would take 33 spots. So do they have to go back and get another variance or adjust it, or is it just, or does the cross parking lot agreement cover that?
Part of the application would, I believe, part of the land development application would have the creation of an interconnect between the giant shopping center and the Panera Bread Applebee shopping center, so that those two shopping centers would now be connected and would share access and perhaps parking as well. So again, depending on how council views the idea of allowing the gas pumps will drive, I believe, the rest of the way in how they intend to proceed.
Okay. Okay, any other questions? If not, we have a motion to move this to the 16th
I'll put that in a form of
December.
motion,
I'll
December 16th,
I'll second.
5 and 6.
We have a
agenda
first and
items.
second? Okay. Items number 5 and 6. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any against? Okay. Anything else, Mr. Paizo, or?
Yes, as to council agenda item number 8, which is the minor land development for Millennium Properties, that had been tabled previously to a date certain of this evening. The township received correspondence from the applicant back on, I guess it was the early part of last week, asking, they had a conflict for this evening's council meeting, and they're also not available for your scheduled December meeting, so they've granted the township a 90-day extension and have asked this to be tabled forward to what I assume is going to be your first meeting in January.
Mr. President, I spoke with our engineer after reviewing the latest review. They still need zoning, so I suggested to him that prior to coming back to you, they take care of that.
Okay, so should we move this to a date certain, Joe, or just take it off till they get zoning?
I would suggest tabling it to a date certain.
Do we have a date in January that our first meeting would be?
Well,
Do you know, Jeff?
inasmuch as all 5 of you will be returning come the beginning of January, and assuming that you're going to maintain the same schedule that we've maintained low these many years, your first business meeting in January would be January 13th.
Okay. And it'll be 2020 according to my.
2020, yes.
Okay. Okay, does anybody want to make a motion to move this to January
Just-
13th?
Just one other, I'm sorry, just one other
Okay,
quick
go ahead.
question. There was some other variances that were granted back in August of 2014, and I think I may have asked this question again, but are they going to have to go back for that? What's the date for when they expire?
The variances that they received?
Yes.
If they have in fact received variances that they have not yet put into effect because they haven't done the development associated with that, with those variances, they have a shelf life under our zoning code of, is it 1 year or 2 years, Ron? It's 1 year. So, however, an applicant can go back to the zoning hearing board and ask that the variance be renewed for an additional period of time, for an additional year. And the zoning hearing board typically does that as a fairly routine matter, particularly where there are, there are still applications pending within the township for the land development itself.
Okay.
So would they have to do that in order to come in front of us? They'd have to get an extension first?
I don't know what the timing is of the variance that they received. It may be in the packet, but inasmuch as they asked last week not to move forward and indicated they weren't coming, I didn't invest time in
Okay.
relearning all the aspects of the
Mr.
application
Takation
for a
said
hearing that wasn't going
2014,
to
that's a
occur.
while ago. If that's
that?
correct, if it's correct.
So that's certainly something we can find out for all of you in advance
Okay.
of the
Could be a typo, too. who
the
knows?
scheduled hearing.
Thank you.
Okay, so somebody will make a motion to move it to the first meeting in January 13th, 2020.
I'll second it.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Vote aye.
Any against? Okay. Anything else, Joe?
That's all I have.
Okay. Okay, next is public comment on agenda items. As things come up, we will have opportunities to speak on each agenda item. Seeing no one come forward, we'll close the agenda item portion of public comment. Next is approval of council minutes for the meeting dated October 15th, 2019.
I'll put a motion on the floor, we accept them as presented.
I'll second.
Now, well, hold on one second, I had one
You had one
One
question?
correction. I meant to mention it to you before, Deb, but on page 8, it says went about. It's went out. That went out. It should be out, not about. The last page, paragraph where it says Council President reiterated the letter that went out, not about. It went out and about, but it should be out. Okay. Okay, any other corrections? If not, who made the motion?
I did.
Okay, Ed made a motion, and second?
I second.
Okay, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any against? Okay, that's done. Okay. Number 4 on the agenda, consideration of public hearing and ordinance amending vehicles and traffic, parking violations, restrictions on Windward Lane to no parking northbound from the playground to the end of the block. Do you have this, Mr. Paizo?
Yes, and I believe you pretty much indicated the sum and substance of it, Mr. Knowles. The township has received a number of complaints regarding vehicles parking on the north side of Windward Lane, and that it is obstructing both view as well as the flow of traffic and creating difficulty for vehicles in general on the site. The Township Traffic Safety Officer went out, performed an inspection, a copy of which is included in your packet. A photograph that was taken by the Traffic Safety Officer is also attached to that report. Following his investigation and review, he has recommended to the mayor and to the administration that no parking signs be placed on the north side of Windward Lane from the playground to the end of the block. As you indicated, Mr. Knowles, the ordinance that is before you this evening has been duly advertised, is in a form acceptable for your consideration this evening, and if so adopted, would effectuate the no parking restrictions that we have just described.
What playground is that, Joe?
It's the back of the coves, I think.
Yes.
I believe that is the back of the coast.
Okay, all right, I knew, okay, down there, okay. I know where it is.
Windward's on the coves.
The one street that wraps around the back.
So, Mr.
I know it
Paizo, just to confirm, the no parking is going to stretch all the way from the playground, the start of the playground, and it goes into a bend, and then it goes down further, and it's going to stretch, I'm assuming, all the way around that bend and down to the end of the street.
That is what I believe is intended, and I believe that is a fair interpretation of the ordinance.
Yep.
My second question, the advertisement, was this just in the newspaper?
Yes, at the beginning of each year, the township designates the newspaper of general circulation serving the township in which legal notices will be placed. That is for 2019, the Bucks County Courier-Times. Ms. McBreen could provide a copy of the proof of advertisement if you need it. But the notice was placed in the Bucks County Courier-Times in accordance with the applicable provisions of the second-class township code for the advertising of ordinances such as this.
That's fine, thank you. I guess my concern is that it appears as if this was put through primarily due to, there was a picture that's attached to our paperwork here, and I'm assuming that a lot of this is attributed to that issue. And my concern is that this may actually affect other residents that are down there. And as we already know, parking is tight down there as it is. So this would prohibit residents from obviously being able to park there themselves. It would also create issues on holidays, where if they had family gatherings. I know there's not a whole heck of a lot of additional parking down there as it is, and it would certainly take that away from them. And then doing this also, if there is anybody that's parking within that particular area where we're looking to put these no parking signs, then the issue is how's that going to impact the rest of the neighborhood in terms of where are those cars going to now park? And in addition to that, then they're going to take up the normal spaces that are there, and I know that's also come up too as well as far as striping is concerned. So that was the reason why I was asking. And as far as the advertising, the problem is that not a lot of people that read the newspaper these days, as we all know. So it's just a matter of trying to.
Well, the council agendas are also, I believe, placed online once the township council president approves the agenda for a particular meeting.
That's fine.
So this agenda item, to the extent that it is explained by the agenda, has been up for several days. There's a maxim in the law, and particularly in municipal law, which is be careful what you ask for because you just might get it. Obviously the township has received complaints about the parking of vehicles. I don't know if these are resident vehicles or other vehicles, but parking of vehicles on that side of the street. And the traffic safety officer performed an investigation and determined that yes, it would be appropriate. So that's his recommendation to all of you. You're certainly free not to accept that recommendation and ask for something either lesser in scope or to turn around and say, no, it's not what all of you want to do.
Yeah, the officer has numerous complaints about vehicles parking along the north side of the roadway. I'm saying the north side, so I guess that means that's where the no parking
And
signs are.
look, I'm not
Is
questioning.
anyone
I'm
here
not
from the
questioning.
audience?
There is,
that,
yeah. So they'll
that would
speak.
come up and
Does anybody want to come forward and
regarding
speak
it?
for or against
I
this?
mean, let's see what they have to say. That's what I
Yeah,
would
you want to come forward and speak for or against this? I don't.
Hi, I stay right opposite the park.
Okay, so what is your name, sir, and your
Hi,
address?
my name is Rishabh Gandhi.
Okay,
I stay on Windward Lane 5224,
Okay.
which is right opposite the park.
okay.
Whenever you come in spring and summer, you see a lot of kids playing, and all the parents, they park opposite there. That's never a problem. I have an autistic son and a disabled parent. Whenever in the night, we have 2 or 3 therapists. Now, if you do that, where will they park? If it's not there, it's all the way on the other side of, what's the road, other connecting road? Yeah, Portside Drive, yeah. So there is that they have to walk like, 200, 300 feet to come there. So I would suggest, we never complained, and we always like the way it is.
Would there be a portion that would be appropriate to put a no parking sign, or are you saying it would be better just to leave it this?
Just to leave it
Okay.
the way it is.
Well, are they generally, from the picture, are they generally residences, trucks who live in the neighborhood who
Yes.
work?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so they're, instead of parking them out front, they're parking.
Yeah, we have other residents also, they can.
Okay.
That's good.
All right, is anybody, yeah, I don't think it's
They
that
did say
bad.
it.
No, Mayor, they did not.
Okay, does anybody else want to
I
come?
reached out.
Okay, someone
Yeah.
want to come forward?
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Tara Donnelly. I live at 5230 Windward Lane. I am the house directly across the street from the playground. I would like you guys to take into consideration to not put up the no parking signs, because that is going to create more of a hassle, and then I will end up having to make a complaint. Because essentially what's going to happen is, if you, how long has it, It's been working there with no parking signs, with like not having no parking signs for the last 44 years. Because I'm pretty sure the codes were built in 1975. So it's been working for 44 years. So I don't know the numerous complaints, but I do know the pictures that you guys are referring to in the traffic report. Those vehicles are parked all the way at the dead end of Windward. So right where Windward meets Flushing almost. I don't know if you guys have a map or actually like took the time to look at Google Maps exactly how far this no parking is going to extend. But if you put up the no parking signs, number one, that means that that's taking away the parking for my company and my holidays. My son is also a special needs son, so my son also has therapists coming to the house. That's where my therapists park as well. It's been working. I have never made a complaint, but also my complaint and my concern is if you do put up the no parking sign starting at the playground all the way to the end of Windward, that means that the residents that use those spots are only going to have my property to now park along. And I have a very large corner end lot of Windward, so my whole lot is basically the bend, which is where all the no parking is going to be, which means those vehicles will now have to park on my property, and that is something that I'm not okay with. So I would really appreciate it if you would take it into consideration to not put up the no parking signs, because it's worked this whole time, and it's going to only cause more issues.
Well, I
for us.
agree too, and if someone wants to take their child to the playground, doesn't want to
Correct.
walk, they should be able to drive down to the playground and park and watch their
Correct.
kids.
And also, another thing is,
No.
if I do have cars parking now on the southbound side, I guess, of Windward, on on our house side of the street, if you have children, that's gonna cause a traffic issue as well, because you're gonna have cars coming around that bend, and if
And it'll be
children are
blocking
coming
traffic.
out in between those cars, the cars coming around that sharp bend are not gonna be able to see the children that are trying to cross to the playground across the street.
Do you know about how many cars park down on that stretch of road? Not the side in front of the houses, but the opposite side in front of the trees there?
You mean right in front of the
On a regular
playground?
basis,
So-
about how many cars park there?
I would say maybe 2 or 3,
Okay,
because you figure our spots are tight.
yes,
I mean, when they were built, probably family members only had one vehicle at the time.
right.
So
I'm
now,
familiar with it. I grew up there. and
Yeah.
So I know how bad the parking has gotten over the years.
yes, so we, for example, are a 3-car household. So my stepdaughter has to park across the street at the playground.
Okay.
And that does not cause any issues for me, doesn't cause any kind of issues for people coming around the bend, because she's far enough back from the bend that's not hindering any kind of traffic issues. And again, us pulling out the back of backing out of our parking spots, there's no issues with that either. So I would implore the council to please not pass this no parking
Okay.
issue.
I appreciate you coming out,
Thank
okay?
you.
Thank you.
Could I see a show of hands, how many people are against having this
How many
ordinance in
people are
place?
against this, okay?
All right,
Okay,
Eddie?
good. All right, so, we'll count them up.
Yes.
Yeah, you can come up if
Yes.
you want, but we're probably gonna reject this, but go ahead.
Go ahead.
You come up, man.
Ask for a motion.
We're getting a show of hands. I'd like you to know that when you go
Ma'am,
on-
identify yourself and
Name
then.
and address, please, for
Name and
Donna
address.
Williams, 5240 North Windward Lane.
Okay.
We are the townhomes are 2 sets of 4 when you go around that bend. There's only 8 homes there. We are basically the 8 homes. We don't know who made these complaints. It's a dead end. The only people that should be going down there are the people that live there or having deliveries.
Right.
Why would there be people going down there and complaining?
Yeah, to me, as long as they look like semi-work trucks or whatever, but
that's
that people
fine,
bring
yeah.
them. If the residents live in the coves, that to me is fine, you know what I mean?
The only question I have,
We
It's
don't
better
have
than
any-
parking out front, you know?
And you know what? When I'm in my parking spot, yes, could there be people there? It's fine. It's no problem.
Okay,
The
we're
problem
gonna-
would be if they put the signs up, because if we have parties,
Ask for a motion, Joe.
Okay,
people
we're
have
good.
nowhere to park.
We're gonna make a motion to deny this.
I've got one question for the residents. Have you ever witnessed delivery trucks having problems getting down at that end? Delivery trucks.
Well, it's a dead-end street, so I mean, if there's
Right.
rather large delivery trucks, I mean, they're gonna have an issue pulling in and backing out if we're all
No,
parked there, but.
right. So no matter what, under normal circumstances, they're gonna have problems no matter what going down that stretch.
But the trash trucks got back down.
Okay,
They backed up.
okay,
Right.
let's not.
Thank you.
Mr. President,
Okay,
I'll
someone
put-
make a motion.
Yeah, Mr. President, I'll put the motion up that we deny the ordinance as submitted for the no parking signs.
Okay, is there a second?
We have a
Okay.
second, and the discussion on the motion is there anyone in favor of this ordinance?
Mr. Knowles, before you
Yes.
call
Yes.
it, just two
Yes.
things. One, the record should reflect that roughly 14 members of the audience raised their hands in opposition to the ordinance.
Okay,
The record should reflect that because obviously someone, or either one or more people submitted a complaint to the township. The
Yeah.
township didn't go out looking on its own to find a no parking zone to create at the end of a dead-end street somewhere in the coves. That, the township is responding as it does. It received a complaint or complaints from your neighbors or from someone. So the record should reflect, because you're taking this action, somebody's going to be coming back to the township saying, why is this still going on? So I just want to make a complete record that a good number of people, several of whom who live on Windward Lane have already spoken. 14 people in the audience were opposed. You've now made the motion to
Okay.
turn down the
Can I just
ordinance.
respond 2 seconds? real quick?
Yeah,
Mr. Paizo, I do recognize that. And I do have compassion for that individual that did make the complaint, and I do recognize the mayor could very well hear from it. But it looks like as if it's an isolated issue, and it's not the first time that we see it across Bensalem, where we see someone bringing home multiple work trucks. And is there anything else that we could look into or research to try to address this issue rather than just arbitrarily coming up with the no parking signs? Is there something else that we could kind of go after them for?
What would that be?
I don't know, that's why I'm asking our
We
our
have the
solicitor. I
size-
mean,
the size of the
we-
trucks
If you're going to ask for it,
they only have,
I know he's brought up striping back there before.
some of the homeowners associations prevent trucks, but I feel bad for people that need that truck to work. I mean, that's how they make a living.
There's no HOA in the codes.
As-
Yeah, I know, that's what I'm saying, that's the only way they do it, though.
We've seen the example as in the neighborhood that's next to St. Ephraim's as well, where we see that happen.
I know, but it's homeowners associations. We have an
Okay.
ordinance on the weight of trucks, but,
That's fine.
okay, so let's do this first, okay? So there's a motion and a second to deny this change in parking. All in favor of the denial?
Aye.
Vote aye.
Any against? Okay, so thanks for coming out.
Good job.
Okay. Okay, thanks for coming out, guys, all right? Thanks for letting us know before we made a mistake.
Hey, New England.
Yeah, we voted, yeah.
Yeah, we did.
5-0.
5-0.
I like it. I like that they, I wonder who the hell.
That's good.
I'll find out because that's amazing.
It could have been somebody was upset with one of them. Okay, number 7 on the agenda, request for waiver of curbs and sidewalks installation subject to the payment in lieu of fee, a fee in lieu of. Mr. Gantz, do you have this? or-
Yes, so we can take this. This is for 1156 Buttonwood Avenue, and we felt that installing curbs and sidewalks at this location would serve no useful purpose. Therefore, we're recommending the council waive the curbs and sidewalks and a payment in fee in lieu of $2,720.
Curbs and sidewalks.
Curbs and sidewalks.
Okay. Okay, so does anybody,
I'll put that in form of a motion, if
Motion?
that's what you're looking for, Mr. Chairman.
okay, yep.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any against? You know what, I'm going to abstain because I've done business with this company.
401.
Okay.
Okay. Number 8 is off the agenda. Number 9, R&S Concrete Paving and Site Work for, it looks like an individual lot at 6327 Garrett Avenue. Mr. Paizo, do you have this, or
Your
is there somebody here for them?
engineer's coming for.
Okay. This is the minus one.
No,
Bring it down here.
okay.
Nick Rose from Protract Engineering. I'm here on behalf of the applicants, R&S Concrete. They were not able to be here tonight. They thought they might get here in time, but I don't see them here yet. I do have all the records of notifications, if I should pass those up to.
Solicitor.
Yeah, get them over to Mr. Paizo, make sure they're in order.
So
Do you have a USB for the computer?
I don't have that, no, sorry. This is actually a very simple application. It's a lot that's a little over an acre, and it actually has the existing house shifted to one side as though they had anticipated having an additional lot on the tract. So the client is just trying to follow through on that now and make the additional lot. The zoning is 12,000 square feet and 80 feet of width, and we're actually, excuse me, proposing 20,000 square foot lots and 100 feet of width. So they're actually oversized relative to the zoning district. So we, as noted, sent out the notifications. We have reviews. The county had no comments other than to recognize that there was a fence crossing the line. They have since actually removed that fence. So that is no longer an issue. And then I have your engineer's letter, which just had a few minor comments in it, which I could either go through or just say we would comply with them.
And then on Mr. Gantz's letter D under subdivision and land development, okay, so the concrete monuments have been provided, must be provided, or will be provided?
Yes, we will show them on the plan. And we'll show the additional right-of-way in D1.
You're going to adjust number one, okay? And then I doubt, that's Garrett Avenue between Bensalem Boulevard and the creek? I
Yes, it
guess?
is.
Okay. So there's no curbs or sidewalks down there, so I'm assuming that you would want a waiver for that?
Yes, we are requesting a waiver of that, and
you'll
Mr.
pay in
Gans has
lieu.
noted that fee in lieu, so.
And you're willing to pay in lieu of? Okay, and then the signature on there. I don't see much else. It looks like a pretty clean thing here, but is there any questions from anybody, any of the council members?
Yeah, I have a question. I'm assuming this property is grandfathered in, is that correct? For its use? Mr. Ron?
Grandfather and what was that?
Well, is this a concrete paving and sidewalk, and it's in an R1 district?
No, they're just building
Sorry,
a
that's just the
residential home.
name of the
That's just the name
applicant.
of the
They would build a
person.
single-family dwelling just like everything else in the neighborhood.
Okay, this is the name of your
That's the
company.
applicant. That's the applicant.
Okay, I understand now. Okay, fine.
Now, I'm just curious, are they building a residential home for someone in their family or for a resale situation?
I believe it's for resale. I don't believe
Okay.
it's for someone in
Okay,
their
so
family.
I didn't know why the
They
concrete.
have actually built a house in that neighborhood before that we've come before you before.
R&S
So,
Concrete, okay, so they apparently, they do more than concrete, they also build houses. I
Yes,
guess.
and I was ready for that question because one of the neighbors we sent a notification to had the same question.
Paving
Are they
and
putting a
sidewalk.
concrete business in here?
Now, the new proposed lot sizes are proportional to the surrounding lot sizes, is that correct?
They are, or they're
Even-
larger?
Even
Yep.
subdivided, they're larger?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, is there anybody from the audience that would like to speak for or against this, this lot being put in, Garrett Avenue? Okay, seeing no one come forward, we'll close public comment. Someone want to put a motion?
I'll put in form of a motion, Mr. Chairman, that we approve the subdivision minor in nature for the applicant R&S Concrete Paving and Site Work, tax map parcel 02-053-021, located 6327 Garrett Avenue. And the applicant will comply with the letter dated September 25th, 2019 for T&M And the applicant will comply with everything on this letter regarding A, B, and C. And then regarding Section D, the applicant will comply with 1, 2, and 4, and ask for a waiver. We would give a waiver for required curbs and sidewalks, and the applicant will pay the fee in lieu of. I got it. That's it.
I'll second it.
Okay,
And,
just a second.
and
Go ahead.
Mr. Knowles, if we could just
Yes.
also include that the deeds for the newly created lots will be submitted to the township for review by the township solicitor and the township engineer, and those deeds will be recorded contemporaneously with the record plan for the subdivision.
I will add that to the motion.
Thank you.
Yep, okay.
Amend.
And you'll amend
Amended the second, yep.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any against?
Great, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Good luck. Okay, number 10 on the agenda, consideration of preliminary and final subdivision for Costa Homes, 4946 in Chamonix Boulevard.
Good evening. Doug Maloney, representing the applicant. I provided Mr. Paizo with our certificate of service of adjoining property owners. I'm sorry? Oh. Do we? No.
Ron, we tell the applicants they need to have this, right? The reason we have this set up is so the people at home can see and the people in the audience can see. Who do they advise and what? Okay, so, eventually we have to look at a penalty if you're not gonna do what you're supposed to do and not apply it so that people can see what they're doing. We didn't spend all the money for the system so that people can say, nah, I just didn't feel like bringing it.
I apologize, Mr. Polari. I wasn't aware. I haven't been here for a while, and I wasn't aware of that. In fact, I asked somebody, do they require thumb drives? Because some municipalities do, so I wasn't aware that you.
Yeah, it's
You had
it's on
that.
the application. I see that you weren't the one on the
Yeah.
application, but somebody from your firm, when they come here, has to make sure that they have that because the residents have a right to see what's going on.
We'll take
As
care
do
of
the people
that.
sitting in the audience.
Absolutely.
Sorry, Mr. President.
Okay, that's okay. Okay, do you have anything else to present before you?
Yes, I'm sorry. I didn't know if Mr. Paizo.
Joe, you okay with the?
They appear to be in order, yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you. Doug Maloney, representing Costa Homes. This is a 4-lot subdivision, and I emphasize subdivision because we are not seeking land development tonight, which is going to be sort of significant in a moment or two when we go through Mr. Gann's review letter. 4-lot subdivision, and the total lot size is about 1.8 acres. One of the lots, proposed lot number 2, is already occupied with a dwelling. Costa Homes has devoted a fair amount of resources into rehabbing that house and is looking forward to selling it. The other 3 homes will be about 2,500 square foot, 2-story homes. We needed a couple of dimensional variances at the zoning hearing board, which we received, conditioned upon us developing in accordance with a plan that we had submitted to the zoning hearing board. Some of the neighbors were concerned about whether the houses were going to be located too close to the building setback line, whether there'd be enough impervious surface left over for amenities like patios and things like that, with the somewhat reduced lot sizes for 2 of the lots. And so we came back a second time to the zoning hearing board with revised plans to show that there was plenty of extra impervious surface, that there'd be plenty of parking off the street. We added additional parking on the lots, and also showed that we would have plenty of impervious surface for any additional amenities like sheds or patios or pools or things like that. So the zoning hearing board granted us those 2 variances.
Now, you haven't included those updated plans in this submission to council tonight, correct?
That's correct, because we aren't, as I mentioned, we're only seeking subdivision approval now. But that was a condition of our compliance with that plan, was a condition of our zoning hearing board relief.
And you didn't think it was maybe applicable or relevant for council to review that information as well?
Well, it's of record with the township. We didn't submit it here because we're only seeking subdivision approval, not proposing any improvements with these plans. But that's why that wasn't included. If we did, then we'd have to, Mr. Gans would probably insist on us providing stormwater management issues, erosion, sediment control, a lot of other features that we didn't want to show yet because we're only showing subdivision.
Which all of those are required anyway if you're doing a subdivision.
Well, they'll be required.
Regardless of whether you're doing land development, they're required at subdivision per our code.
Well, you are, except if you're not proposing an improvement, you can't really show any features or things relating to improvements.
But you have improvements that you're planning on.
We will
You showed
be.
them to the zoning hearing board.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, we showed them in generic form to the zoning hearing board. We showed an outline of a house. We showed impervious surface calculations. We showed driveway schematics. Sure, at the zoning hearing board. And when we come before you with land development, we're going to show those same features and a lot more. Right now, the reason we're here now, the reason we're doing this in a two-step process is, as I mentioned, Mr. Costa has devoted a fair amount of resources into rehabbing the existing house, and he can't sell that until the subdivision's approved. He's involved in another project right now and can't devote those resources to this project. Rather than leave a house that's been rehabbed vacant for more time and over the winter, he wants to be able to sell that and then start developing these properties next year as early as possible. So he'll be back in front of you with those fully engineered plans that have to meet T&M's approval.
And you did say, I want to make sure I heard you right, and I did hear you, but you said that Lot 1 and Lot 4 are going to be undersized, and they already approved the zoning variance on that?
Received, variances for that. They're not much undersized. They're slightly undersized.
16,000 versus 20,000
That's
is
20% less
good.
than the required
pretty good
area.
amount.
Okay.
20% undersized is rather significant.
On which lot is that?
That's lot 4.
That's lot 4, okay.
16,000 square foot versus
Okay,
20,000.
and
basically.
part of that is because some of the lots are oversized. The total amount, I think, we had 79,500 square feet, something like that.
I don't think they're that
Total.
oversized.
And
I don't
if we
think they are.
could have
Well, the one at the
divided
house
them in a
exists
cookie
on.
cutter of 20,000 square foot each, we would have been a couple hundred feet undersized for the entire tract. So it would have been de minimis. Unfortunately, because the way the building is set on the lot, we had to sort of squeeze two of the lots a little bit more than we would have liked to.
Did you have to?
Well,
Did you have to squeeze, or could you have just gone with bigger lots? Instead of doing 4 lots to try and maximize as much building in a small space, could you have done 3, maybe 2?
and all that was kicked around the zoning hearing board at a fair amount of length.
But you're going to have to understand from our point, we just went through this with another developer, and it caused a big problem for all the other residents that lived in the neighborhood, because they put a patio in, it went right up to the
To the setback line.
setback line, and then they want to put an air conditioner on, it's almost in the next person's yard, and then there's water runoff onto other people's yard because the developer forced one extra house in to make more money and didn't care about the rest of the people. So we've already been burnt once. Mr. Maloney, we're not going to get burned again, because I'll tell you what, we're not in this to make money for the builder, we're in this to make it good for all the residents, including the ones that are there now, so.
Understood.
I agree with Mr. Sloan, I want to see what we're looking to do here before I'm willing to vote on the subdivision.
You have one lot. This is 1,600 square foot larger than 20,000. So that, I don't understand what you're saying, that one lot is so large that it makes the others de
I
minimis.
think the size of that lot is dictated by the existing house and the required setbacks.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
so that's
what we're
what's
saying.
left.
We wanted to.
That's defined by the setbacks, so that's lot 2. Lot 1 squeezes in on the one side. Lot 3 is a standard 20,000,
Lot, and
Plus
one's on
square
a
foot
corner,
lot.
one's on a corner.
and then lot 4 is whatever's left over.
Yeah.
I get how you got there.
Yeah, and
But
that's
it doesn't
exactly.
make sense.
And we wanted to try to minimize, as you pointed out, because of the setbacks, we wanted to try to minimize the number of variances that we needed. So we reduced that, we tried to comply with the setbacks, everything else except for the lot size, and we couldn't comply with that with the existing structure. So that's why we got the relief we needed. And now we're only seeking subdivision approval, and we'll have to come back before you to convince you that
But
the way
you're
the structures...
coming to council for subdivision after you're already into your plans for reconstruction.
I'm
You've
sorry.
already renovated the one home that's there,
Yeah.
and now, as an afterthought, now I want to chop up the land, now I have to go in front of council.
It wasn't an
Why wasn't this plan for subdivision brought up prior to any work on that house? Which is,
Well-
that house is really dictating where you're trying to draw the lot lines.
I think the house was, and I guess Mr. Costa could answer that better because he's the builder and I'm just a lawyer.
Okay.
But,
I'd love to hear from Mr. Costa.
Well, the reason is my thought was always to subdivide it, and I thought the house was in very good shape to be able to save the house. In fact, the previous owners asked me to save the house because it meant a lot to them, and I took that in consideration and I saved the house. And I think it came out pretty good there. Now, when it comes to the impervious that we're going to do there, the engineer can testify to that, but we have basically double of the surface that we need for the house. So this is not a situation where if somebody builds a house there and later one wants to do a pool or wants to do a back patio, now he's not going to be able to do it. He has to go back to zoning to have the relief for that. We have plenty of leftover impervious to be able to do that.
We don't know that.
Yeah, it is.
Because
on
we
the
don't
plan.
have that information in front of us tonight.
Maybe not on this plan, but we do have that information, correct? On the zoning. On the zoning.
We're not the zoning board, we're the council. You're asking for a subdivision. You could supply zoning with that paperwork, but you can't supply us, and you're asking for a subdivision. That's a little disrespectful, I would think, on our behalf as a council. So you also didn't bring your USB that you were supposed to bring with the information that's supposed to be on there. So it looks like we're gonna get ourselves in the same situation that we just had with the residents with a similar type of thing, and you're asking for us to prove something without proving to us what you're looking to do. I understand we're not approving all the houses and everything, but people come in with a sketch plan. Hey, this is what we're gonna do. This is what the dimensions are. You're giving us nothing. You're just saying, give it to me, because we want it. Zoning gave us a variance to make smaller lots, which is, again, is the same thing that happened in the other development, and now the residents that live around there have nothing but problems, flooding problems, people encroaching or putting things right up to their property line. I'm not willing to see that happen again.
And on top of that, you've got 15 different requests for waivers.
That's what I wanted to touch on. That's why I mentioned it's important to emphasize that this is only subdivision, because
Because all of this is required for land development, or the majority of it, but you don't want to show us any of your land development
Right,
plans.
because we aren't asking for land development. We're suggesting that we're going to do that at a later date. We're going to show you, and we're not asking for variances of these 15. 12 of them, I believe, are simply requested they be deferred to land development. We're not asking for a waiver.
So
One of them
let's-
is withdrawn, and two of them are very minor. One is, deals with the plan size, that's number one, and the other one, I think, is number 7, deals with the cartway width for Neshaminy Boulevard, which doesn't make any sense for this particular parcel.
Understood.
So really, the waivers are only 2, and everything else is
So
deferred.
if the subdivision were granted, and then Mr. Costa went and sold these properties, you're just kicking the can down to another developer. And we have no control over that. If the subdivision gets approved, you're not on the hook. Someone else is on the hook if that property gets sold and built by somebody else.
Except on the hook to satisfy you and to satisfy your engineer that they're complying with your ordinance, and that it's
But
not going
all
to
of
have
all of these requirements are in place
Right, exactly.
at the subdivision phase for a reason, so that we can understand as a governing body how this property is going to be used, how it's going to be developed, and if it's going to be done correctly to meet township requirements.
I agree with you to a certain extent.
You're asking us to not do our job and let you just go ahead and subdivide and do whatever
If we
you want.
subdivided this, you could easily, as other people have done, snook at us and build one lot at a time, and we never see you again.
And what? I'm sorry.
And we would never see you again. We would subdivide this tonight, and we wouldn't see you again.
No, I
You don't
think
have to see you again, because you can,
It's my understanding that this project involves 3 single-family homes would require land development approval. I
if you
think
did one
that-
at a time,
I'm sorry?
if you did one home at a time, would you
Well,
need to come back to
I
us?
think they're all part of the same project, so they
Well,
require...
project, smoject, I mean, seriously, you could still build one building at a time and never see us
Again,
again.
we've been burned
Yeah,
very
I-
recently, and we're not about to let that happen again.
I understand. Can I make a suggestion, though? And the suggestion is this: approve the subdivision approval only, subject to compliance with your land development ordinance and subject to that no permits get pulled at all until you get land development approval. That way, we have to come back and we can prevent the kind of harm that you're all concerned with preventing.
How about you come back with, we continue this, and you come back with the proper plans to show us what you're looking to do, a sketch plan of how they're gonna be laid out and what's gonna be done before we approve any of it. What you're doing here is asking us to approve a plan without seeing it. We just had a guy come in, we approved his plan similar to this, then he decided he wanted to turn the house sideways, and it threw everything into a tizzy. I'm not willing to vote on something unless I can at least have a sketch plan or some kind of idea of what we're looking at. I think you're way off base with this, asking for what you're asking for. Hey, give us the approvals on this, waive this till then, and then you decide to change something, and everything that we're doing here is worthless because you changed the plans. I want to see what you're doing.
Yeah, I don't even think a sketch plan would suffice, because they could change that, whereas opposed to a
Package it with land development.
subdivision
let
land
us see.
development plan to say, this is what we're gonna do, and we can approve it based on, water flow, whatever would have to be, appropriate with that. I mean, you have the, storage, you have the, stormwater,
And I want to be,
problem. We have to be aware
we
of.
want to see finalized things that are locked in terms of percentages of impervious surface and, you know, what the setback distances are going to be, how it's going to affect the neighbors.
I understand your client wants to sell the house that's there and then come back and do the other, but that's not our problem.
It's not your
It's not
problem,
our
but
problem
it's...
to do that. And we're saying we've been burned before and we're not gonna get burned again. Show us the whole project and then we can do it all at one time, bing, bang, boom, it's done right, and we're protecting ourselves and the residents of Bensalem.
And I hate to say it, but I'm starting to get a sense of how council feels about this application.
Okay.
If I could talk to my client for a moment.
Also, would you be willing, number 13, one of the things you would need is, you're asking for a waiver for sidewalks and curbs, but the county assessment of the project felt that because it was adjacent to a school and connected to the sidewalk already, that you might be better off, now, I believe it's up to the engineers, but putting sidewalks and curbs there, so kids, once they made it that far, will be able to have a sidewalk to walk on to get to school.
And I didn't get that far in my presentation, Mr.
Okay.
Knowles, but that's one of the, that we're withdrawing that waiver request.
Oh, that's the one you're withdrawing, okay.
So what is your intent, Mr. Maloney?
Well, if I could speak to my client for
Yes,
just a moment, if
Okay, and
you'll
we'll see
excuse
if we
me.
can put this to a later date.
My client also has the sense of the council and is agreeing to come back with land development plans.
Okay,
you
so
can do it
what
all.
date would
take
you
you?
want that moved to?
How long will it take you to get the plans in? And
Well, this would be a new application because you'd be doing land development.
And it would have to go through full engineering review by the township.
probably into
Okay.
January.
Okay, so we'll just take it off to, hey, Joe?
Joe?
They have to come in with land development, so we just take it off, just remove it, we don't have to move it to a date?
Well, they would have to withdraw their
Well,
application.
at this
If
point,
they're willing
all
to
that's
withdraw.
into the township is preliminary and final for the subdivision. There's nothing in for land development. If they're going to come back to council with subdivision and land development, it's going to require either a new application or updating this one. In either case, it's going to require new notices to be sent regardless, in which case there's really no benefit to tabling it forward to a date certain, because that's the benefit.
Okay, so if they're withdrawing it, we don't have to
If
take
they
any
withdraw
action
it,
then?
yeah,
Okay.
that would probably be.
All right, well, thanks for coming out then, all right?
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
So
Appreciate your comments.
Doug, just so the record's clear, your intent is to withdraw the application?
Yeah, they have to say that.
Yeah, we'll
Okay.
withdraw and
Just so,
resubmit.
that's
Yeah.
fine.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Okay.
Nothing personal.
Okay. Al? Yeah, can you wait till public comment, because this is withdrawn, so. We only have one more thing now, all right? Then we'll, and it might be, I don't know. Okay, number 11 on the agenda is consideration of escrow release for Somerton Valley Homes Phase 3, release number 17.
Mr. President, I have some questions for Mr. Neron.
Mr. Neron, can you come up and address the board?
Hi, Quentin, how are you?
Hello, how are you doing today?
Good. You went out and did an inspection of Somerton Valley,
I did a walkthrough on, I'm trying to think what day it was, I forget exactly what day it was, last week. With representatives from the developer, Lennar, and the contractor. Pretty much walked 98% of phase 1. We didn't go out to Carter Road, but we kind of started in the middle, worked our way through, did phase 2, phase 3. They're in the process of doing the replacements in phase 3 of the concrete aprons and concrete sidewalks we had marked out several months ago. One of the things that they were going to be doing now is the issues within the right-of-way. There's some other minor issues on phase 1 and 2 that they're going to start to address. The escrow release today is for paving of phase 3. I believe there is one item, some striping, I believe, that was in there, and the phases of the parking spaces. That's really the only thing that's on the agenda for tonight. One of the things that they're going to be talking to, I guess they were going to be setting another meeting with the township solicitor regarding going into a dedication and maintenance bond to get some clarity on that. One of the things that we had told the township solicitor last week was that we were going to get a cost estimate on anything that was outstanding in phase 1, 2, or 3 that we would think that we need money for to make sure we did have enough money in escrow on.
when will we have that?
We're trying to get it done everything this week, so I'm hoping by Thursday or Friday at the latest. So one of the things we were looking at doing now is preliminary. We do think we do have plenty of money in escrow after some things are taken care of. After this release is done, I think we have $190,000 and change, I believe, right now. I could be wrong off the top of my head.
With all of the phases, you mean?
With all the phases, right. So there's 190 and change, we'll say. I think there's, after this release, I think there's going to be another 80 left in phase 1, I believe, or not, phase 3, I believe, and I think there's
roughly
20 and another 20 in phase 1 and 2, respectively. Okay. So we're thinking there might be like $20,000 if that, but we have to confirm all the numbers and everything like that.
And you're taking the money for the park also, right?
Correct. The money for the park.
This in there, so.
Right, so there's enough money, so even if this release does go through, there's money for that park area that was agreed upon by the developer, plus we feel that there's enough money in escrow after all that for anything that's outstanding in there. So one of the things that we were looking at doing now, this does need to be audited by the finance department.
Yes.
So I know there's some issues there, so we're trying to get all that taken care of before the actual money is released to the developer.
So if a motion was made to approve this subject to
Audit by the finance.
The finance department looking at it, you guys get all your numbers together.
Correct.
And there's not enough money.
Then they would put a hold on
Then
it.
they would put a hold on it, and they'd have to come up with whatever monies, or we would be protected. from
Correct.
that.
And so, since, like Mr. Polari just said, just to reiterate, if we would make it contingent upon an audit by the finance department, you wouldn't have to come back to us to put a hold on it. You would have the
Correct.
authority to hold it, right?
Correct. Yeah, that's one of the things, because this actually came in, I forget the original date, but I believe it was in August.
Yeah, this has been around for a long time
Right,
now,
so-
and that's why I want to get to the bottom of it. Are we close to that?
Yeah, there's all the houses are built, everything's graded and seeded. They had some grading on phase 3 that had to be done. That's all been done. I know there's an area where there's pico wires that needs to be addressed from the county standpoint as well as ours. And then, like I said, when we walked the job last week, they were in agreement that they were going to come in and do a lot of this work, not even looking for money for a release of that, just to kind of clean things up that were been missed before.
But the release they're asking for are things that are already done.
Correct.
Is this a townhouse?
Townhouses,
development?
yes.
Okay, could you, before we release this money, could you, subject to the audit, also check to see if the appropriate lights were put in place, the street lights, Because I had some neighbors complaining
I
about it.
know there was issues
traveling.
with that. I'm not sure off the top of my head what the outcome on that. I know Traffic Planning and Design did do a study, and I know there were some discussions, and I'm not sure really what the last discussion was on that.
Can we get that information then?
I can check with TBD on that as well.
Yeah,
Because it
we
could be
had-
a safety issue, because Mr. Kisselback was saying he talked to somebody back there, there's like a dark area.
Okay.
That's pretty dark. I mean, it could be a.
Yeah, I know
safety
the
issue.
lights were in per plan, but I think TBD wanted some additional ones, and there's some back and forth, but I'm not sure 100% what the actual final decision was on anything.
And they'll have to work that out and get that
Correct.
done for any lights that'll be done. But that has nothing to do with this release that's here. If they have to put more lights in, they're gonna have to put more
Right.
escrow money in for that.
Well, we wouldn't just release the remaining of the escrow.
Right, you're gonna release whatever.
Correct.
I mean, we wanna make sure that we have enough money to get this done, but, it's also been months now that we're sitting on it. So if we make it subject to, to Finance Department doing an audit, then they could release or decide what can be released, what can't be released.
So
Correct.
prior to the next release, you're going to have the information to us, and it's going to be resolved one way or the other? with
Yeah, we
you?
were going to get the numbers by the end of this week to the Solicitor's Office in Finance.
I'm talking about the lighting now, to make sure. the
Well, yeah,
lighting
that
is-
would be involved in that as well,
Okay,
so.
thank you.
Thank you, Quinn. I appreciate it.
Okay, is there any other questions for Quentin before he sits down?
Number 2 on this list, the concrete sidewalk, 4 inches with stone base. It's got a footnote, work has been done but must be verified since representative was not present. Has it been verified yet?
Yes, we did go out, when that release was done back in the day, they had just poured it, so we did go back out and check
And
that out.
checked it, okay,
Yeah, there's like,
all
I
right.
think that from what I remember, there was like an area about 20 or 30 feet that was not checked.
Okay.
It was freshly poured when we got there.
Right, I figured it was something like that. Okay, so, but it's
Yep.
cured, everything's checked, it's good?
Yep, that
Okay.
area's good.
That's all I had.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, is there,
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the escrow release for Somerton Valley Homes Phase 3, release number 17, with the approval of with the audit from the finance company for make sure that we have enough funds there and that everything's covered.
so it's a 68,600 contingent upon audit by the
Yes.
Finance Department.
I'll second that.
Okay, second by Mr. Sloan. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any against? Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, we have public comment. Does anybody,
In regard to that last
okay, hold
comment,
on one second,
just
sir, if you could give us a second. Sorry.
Finance Department
I'm
and
sorry.
obviously the township engineer
Yes.
as well. 'cause
Yeah,
there are a
township
number-
engineer,
Number
yes.
of items that you talked about
Yes.
that are going to require the input of the engineer, not the least of which is
Yes.
the
So the
list that he
township
said you have
engineer
by
and the
end of the
finance
week.
department would have to
No-
both
nothing-
agree.
Nothing would be released unless everybody's on the same page and we know where we are. So
And yet,
I-
we want to confirm that you have enough funds left to make sure that they finish
Right.
everything, right? Okay, I'm sorry, sir, go ahead. If you can identify yourself, and then we can have you.
My name's Paul Barnes, 4948 Hillside Avenue. I was here for Costa Homes, so I'm not really sure what I can say, what I can't say.
Or you can
Or if
say
I can
anything
just
you
comment
want.
about
Within-
anything.
Within
or-
reason, you can say anything you want.
I mean, I don't want, it's sort of like, they're left, but I had a
They're
couple.
out there if you want to have a conversation with
Yeah,
them
not really.
afterwards. But good. Okay.
I have a couple technical questions that I've sort of been, we've been fighting this development at Costa Homes, but I keep running into like little technical problems. So I just wanted to ask the council just sort of what to do. When they were submitted the plans for tonight, they sent out a certified letter that said like, hey, we're going to do this, so to notify the residents and such. And we got that on Thursday afternoon, and it's Tuesday, which is like it's just nowhere near enough time for lay people to sort of get organized, read what we have to read, figure out what we have to know, define terms, so we can come here and speak intelligently on what we want to do. I asked several people today in various offices here in the buildings, as did one of the other residents, about how much time we should have between when we're notified and when the meeting is. And we got, nobody knows.
Well,
Nobody could give us an
Okay, hold on a
answer.
second, we should, Mr. Paizo should know that, I would think.
7 days.
Okay.
It's in the ordinance, it's 7 days.
It's a law, like it's a
It's a law.
law.
So it wasn't 7 days. So if somebody does that, if they notify us like 5 days before, And then we come here and council, does the council say, hey, should
Is
have
it
been
mailed
7 days
7 days
later?
ahead, Joe, or?
You saw what we just did, right?
I saw what you did, and I was like, I wish I was allowed to jump up and
Okay,
down and cheer.
let
but that would have been inappropriate.
Mr. Barnes, let Mr. Paizo respond.
Yes, it's supposed to be, they're supposed to provide us proof that they sent the notice out no fewer than 7 days before the scheduled date of the hearing. So that's what we're provided with here. And then-
Okay, so if they mailed it 7 days ago, it could come 3 more days later or something.
Correct, and they are required to send them by both certified and regular mail,
Okay.
Is that business days?
calendar.
Well, because like, we got it on Thursday afternoon. If you don't have time Friday, you're not getting the paper Saturday, or you're not getting the information Saturday or Sunday, so.
We didn't get our packet till Friday, and we have to review everything and go through it over the weekend, which are calendar days, and so we understand.
The answer to your question is yes. If they don't send them out in a timely fashion, we're not going to hear the case because the law says that you have to have it out within 7 days, and most developers put them out in plenty of time so to give.
And they're going to have to resend when they come back before us again. So.
And the first thing that we do to start the hearing is our solicitor will check to make sure that the notices are in order and that we can proceed with the hearing.
So how do we change that that ordinance? Because it's not enough for a layperson to do that. I mean, you guys know a lot of things about all the rules, and you have experts to resource, but we're just like a person going like to an office saying, hey, I'll give you a perfect example of what the problem is. Today, because this was the first day I had time to do it, I came to the offices here, and I went to the office as a building and code, and I asked about getting some information for this council meeting tonight. And the person there looked at me like, I've never heard the word council meeting. She looked at me like I had no idea what I was talking about. And I said, well, there's a council meeting tonight. Is there any information that I should have? I want to read, and no idea what I was talking about. Left, came back, said, we don't have anything to do with council here. You're going to have to go talk to that secretary. So I went to the secretary at the front. I said, same thing, council meeting tonight? She said, yes, there is. Is there any papers I can look at? I want to review. She said, yes. She dug through some papers. She pulled out some plans and a packet. I said, okay, where can I read those? Lay out the plans. And she's like, there's no place to go look at plans. Actually,
Well, we have an office right behind where she sits. I don't know why.
well, I'll tell you, I'll say that, I'll talk about that in a minute, because that's important. I've actually addressed that with the mayor in the past, and it doesn't work. Doesn't work to the point where the police came, doesn't work. But, so I started to go through the plans and pieces of paper, and I divided, like, okay, I've read this, I know this. This, I'm not really sure about this. I think I'll get a copy of this so I can read it. I went over, she's like, you're not permitted to have any copies. I said, this is the zoning hearing board results of that thing and what they say about the zoning hearing board. I'm not permitted to have any results. And she said, no, you're not permitted to have it. And then she said, and she kind of like went like, but you can take a picture of it with your phone. I was like, well, A, that's bizarre. Why can't I have a copy? And of course, right behind her, there's a copy machine. And then also, I don't have a phone. So today, I needed papers to come here to speak on certain points to this Costa thing, but I couldn't get them. But you know what? My tax dollars paid for them.
I don't know what the rules on that.
So, I mean, like, how can I want to come here, and I want to be like on it, and I can't do it because I couldn't get the paper.
Did you go to the township website and go to the agenda for our meeting? Because a lot of these documents should be there with the hearing.
I went to the council page, and it listed like, similar to the paper we got here when I came in, all the different stuff. But there's nothing there that says like, if you go here, here's the plans. I couldn't find any plans online. I couldn't find any results of this. I couldn't find the packet of papers that she gave me today to look at, and which I was not permitted to copy. And I think that's outrageous. I mean, in theory, I'm helping to pay for those papers, and yet I wasn't permitted to look at them, to copy them. And I also think it's a little discriminatory, because maybe if there's some, really sharp teenager comes in and can just memorize everything, but I'm almost 60. I'd like to have a piece of paper that I could sit down and read and think about and cross out and make notes, but I was shocked when she told me that.
Okay,
You're not permitted to take that. You're not permitted to copy it. The other thing I'll mention is that when you mentioned about the room, this was 2-3 years ago, but I will say also that it happened to another person here today, which was not the papers. There's not really any place to lay out plans when you want to look at plans. Now, there's a conference room right here.
Right.
Nobody's using the conference room. It's dark. Hey, if anybody comes in and have scheduled time for the conference room, I'm out of there. Like, no problem, of course. Well, when I went in there years ago to sit down, the guy came in almost immediately. You got to leave here. You got to get out of this room. I was like, what are you talking? I'm just trying to read it. You can't be in this room. And he said, do I have to go get the cops? I'm like, I'm just looking at some plans. I'll leave whatever you want me to. I just need a place to lay out on some plans. He goes and gets a cop and brings the cop over here and says, you can't be in this room. Well, that's outrageous.
This didn't happen. This happened a couple of years ago.
This happened several years ago. However, this same thing without the cop happened today to another person. So, what's that? So I addressed that with the mayor and when it happened, and the mayor said, I'll look into it, I'll get back to you. Never heard a word again, so I don't know what happened to it. But I thought it was like an isolated case, like that was just somebody having a bad day, or whatever. But then it happened again today to somebody else. I pay for that conference room with my taxes. I want to use that conference room and nobody else is using it for 5 minutes to look at some plans, I'm using it. That's it. If you want to throw me out with the cops, I don't care. I'm going to use the conference room I helped to pay for. And I don't want to hear about it.
Okay.
It's
Okay,
ridiculous.
well, you should be able to, so.
Well, yeah, but twice.
Okay,
I've
anything
been
else?
told
Do you have
no.
anything?
Like
Okay.
not, could you please, it's,
Okay,
and
well,
actually the person who was in there today was basically lied to. He said, they
Well,
were
he's
told.
here, so why don't we give him a
Yeah,
chance to
okay.
speak, and then he can tell us what happened.
The other thing I'd like to just mention, well, that sort of I alluded to it, is that there was just nothing on the website. And it's 2019, I want to be able to go to the website and see the plans. And I want to see all the paperwork related to the thing that I'm going to come and discuss on a
You did hear
day.
the developer say that they didn't know they had to submit the digital plans, and they did not submit them to us.
Yes, but, well, it's sort of weird, because when we were in zoning, we referred to them as plans, the things that they submitted, which they were very generic. It was just like a box, like here's a house, And we referred to it plans, and then zoning referred to them as plans. And then about halfway through, some of the zoning members got a little ticked off at us, and they said, these aren't plans, these are exhibits. And we're like, well, what does that mean? Like, we're lay people, we don't know, what does that mean? What's the difference between a plan and an exhibit? And we were, well, these aren't plans, you don't have to worry about it. And I really, really wanted to bring the text and the transcript of zoning for this property to this council for a couple reasons. First, when I went to get it, I was surprised to learn that it's not a transcript, it's a summary. And it's like a summary that looked like it was written by a 5th grader. There was misspellings all through it, sentences that didn't make any sense. It was like, what is this? I need to have the piece, I need to know what was said there. And the reason I need that is because when we were there, zoning said, build the property. You can have the variances, which I'll discuss in a minute, but they said you can have the variances. But what I was told later was that in that meeting, they should have said to the people who were concerned, if you don't agree with this ruling, you can appeal it, which we would have done. But they never said that. They actually said the opposite. They said, they literally kicked it down the can to you. They said, you can deal with this in council. And I'm thinking like, well, I'm in zoning about zoning. So why can't I deal with zoning and zoning? Why do I have to go to council and say, hey, zoning, what you did wasn't right? I got to go to council? So I guess one of my technical questions is, who oversees zoning? Do you oversee zoning?
No, they have their own attorney.
Let's go to the attorney and let the
He has
attorney,
an
since
attorney.
you're
They have an
asking
attorney in
all
zoning.
kinds of legal
Yeah.
stuff, let's let the
Well,
attorney answer
I just don't
your
know
questions.
the
Okay, well,
pathways.
We're not attorneys, so let's let the
let him
attorney.
answer, let him answer.
If council is okay, I'd rather hear the comprehensive list of all the nightmarish things this gentleman's encountered with township government before I respond.
Well, since I'm sorry. Since I can speak on Costa, I will say this. I agree with him, like the things that you said today to him, and especially you, because there was a really good point that you made, sort of. It was a good point. I don't mean to misunderstand. But what happened there is that there's a house on the property, and it was basically really beat up. And when Costa came in, he gutted that house down to the walls. And he's just said here right now, the house is in really good shape, and so he decided to keep it, which was not true. He gutted it down to the walls. There was nothing left of that house except 4 walls. So if it was in really good shape, like he said today, why would you gut a house that's in really good shape? So, he had I think that the most important point out of all of it is If he could have came into that property, just went a little further and took the walls down and had a bare property, and then built 3 nice-sized houses that are just like all the houses around it, would have needed no property variances because all the properties would have been within the RA1 code. And I wouldn't have been here, wouldn't have to go to zoning, everything would have been fine. But what he did is he rehabbed that house, which is offset, and then there's a property too small to build on that zone, a property that he can build, and another property that's too small to build. And then he came here, came to zoning and said, it's a problem, the properties are too small, I can't build now, you gotta give me a variance. So the situation is, he created the problem that necessitated him coming here for the variances. And when zoning passed and said, that's cool, you can build, I thought, I have this book. I had to go get this book, and with all the little rules in it about how we can build and all the size property. And I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, what's this worth? It's worth nothing. If somebody can create the problem and then come here and say, oh, there's a problem, you have to help me by giving me variances, that's unacceptable.
But we didn't do that.
I know, but I just want that on record, that is the definition of like what you don't give a variance for in zoning. So, but again, they never told us so we could appeal in zoning. And they also said, and you can take it up in planning. So when we went to planning said, you can't talk about that here. There's no reason for you to talk. Zoning is its own thing. We have nothing to do with zoning. Well, that's what they told us in zoning. You can deal with it in planning and council. So if they're not telling us we can appeal, and they're telling us in the meetings that we should deal with it in planning, but we can't deal with it in planning, it's like the whole system's kind of breaking down. I don't know how to fight the problem because none of the rules make any sense. I can't get documents because I'm prohibited to. I can't sit in the room and look at anything. And so I'm sort of like, well, what do I do? That's why I was really heartened today and hear what you guys said to him, because you just nailed him on it, which was, I kind of expected because you've done it before when we had our cell tower problem. So I think that's the main technical thing. I just need to see if someone can somehow oversee zoning. One of the papers I read today, which I can't show you because I wasn't allowed to have it, is the result, zoning makes a ruling, and then they put out a paper saying, here's what we've decided. There's points on there that are absolutely not true. Now, how do I deal with that? Well, what I would do is I would appeal, I suppose. But then nobody said we could appeal.
Right.
So how do I appeal?
Mr. Paizo, could you please
can you answer
explain the difference of council and zoning and what our jurisdiction is, their jurisdiction is, please, because we're just going to keep going through this and going through this with zoning, which we have no control in zoning.
The zoning hearing board is a quasi-judicial board of township residents appointed by the mayor and consented to by the council, who are by statute charged with the interpretation of the township zoning ordinance, listening to appeals from decisions of the township zoning officer, and ruling on requests for variances, whether they be use variances or dimensional variances that are submitted to the township by owners of property in the township, be they legal or equitable owners. At the township council has no right to grant relief from the township zoning ordinance except in the case of conditional uses, where by virtue of state law and the township zoning ordinance, the council is charged with responsibility for hearing applications for conditional use where the zoning ordinance imposes that restriction or that obligation on a potential use in a particular zoning class. There, the township council is charged with interpreting and or enforcing the zoning ordinance, but otherwise, The interpretation and enforcement of the zoning ordinance is within the purview of the zoning officer and the zoning hearing board. I haven't attended a meeting of the zoning hearing board in a few months, but I can tell you that the current zoning officer and the current zoning hearing board solicitor and the zoning hearing board solicitors who preceded him all begin the zoning hearing board meeting with a standard script that they read from, advising the public in attendance exactly what the hearing is, what the duties and responsibility of the zoning hearing board are, advising individuals in attendance that they have the right to request party status during any of the upcoming zoning hearings. And party status is a particular status that one has to apply for and be granted in regard to zoning applications. Party status entitles to an individual to just that, to be a part of the zoning hearing, to be entitled to file an appeal, to be in receipt of transcripts and other documents germane to that zoning application. The public can, of course, testify during a zoning hearing without obtaining party status, but nonetheless, all members of the public are advised of their right to request and be granted party status. It is pretty much standard at the outset of the zoning hearing that the public is made aware both of the rights of appeal of the applicant and of third parties to any actions that are going to be heard that evening by the zoning hearing board. At the conclusion of a zoning hearing in Bensalem, there is a single-page memorandum of the action taken by the zoning hearing board that evening that is given to the applicant, memorializing whether the requested variances have been granted or denied, and which members of the zoning hearing board so granted or so denied. Subsequent and typically at the next scheduled hearing of the zoning hearing board will then adopt a written decision and order memorializing the relief that was either granted or denied at the prior meeting's hearing. A copy of the zoning hearing decision for Costa, I believe, is in all of your packets this evening. And so there was not chicken scratch as to what occurred that evening that was written down by someone, but rather a typed decision of the zoning hearing board setting forth the facts that were taken into consideration that night, the law that was applied to those facts, the ultimate decision of the zoning hearing board, the ultimate order of the zoning hearing board that is signed by the respective members of the zoning hearing board. That is on file with the township. So again, to the extent that anyone thinks that things are just happening willy-nilly at the zoning hearing board, they're not. The public is entitled to a copy of the decision of the zoning hearing board, and I believe are dealt with in the same manner as most requests for government documents, which is there is a right to know request. There is a right to know form that is submitted to the township identifying the document or documents that a member of the public wants to receive from its government. And within a period of 5 days, the township has the legal obligation to either provide those documents or to notify the resident requestor why the documents are not being provided. There are a laundry list of reasons why documents may not be provided, but again, the township is obligated to let a requestor know what those reasons are, and at the same time, the township notifies that person requesting that they have a right to appeal that decision of the township if they believe either the information that they've been provided is insufficient or inadequate, or they don't agree with the township's reasoning in not providing certain documents. So decisions of the zoning hearing board, I believe, as a matter of policy by the township, are dealt with by the right to know process. Now, for matters that are pending before this board, prior to a council meeting. Again, the applicant is required to mail notice to adjacent property owners. They're required to provide us with evidence that they did that. Costa Homes did in fact provide us with evidence and a certification that's been signed and attested to under certification of perjury by the attorney representing Costa Homes, that the notices were mailed to the properties, to the neighboring property owners as identified by the township within the time period that they were required to do so. The final date for doing so being November 5th, and that's the date that they have certified under, again, penalty of perjury, that the things were mailed. The proofs of certification or proofs of mailing that have been provided to us show generally that most of these were delivered by certified mail on November 7 or November 8. They're also required to send them by regular mail, and I would trust that my experience with the United States Mail is that regular mail gets delivered ahead of certified mail, not after. So I think it's safe to assume that most of the notices were received on either November 6, 7, or at the latest 8th, consistent with what's been attested to by the applicant's attorney and consistent with what the township ordinance and, for that matter, state law call for. The notice does, in fact, advise property owners that they are free to come to the township and to review copies of the plans in advance of the meeting. This township processes, I don't know how many land development applications a month, how many a year. You deal with several of them every meeting. And I believe this is the first time in the 2 years that you gentlemen have been sitting here, and the first time in I don't know how many years the other 3 gentlemen have been sitting here, that anyone has said that they've been in any way impeded with getting access to plans that they've asked for from the Building and Planning Department that are on scheduled to be heard by this board at one of your council meetings. The plans are made available in my experience. Again, I don't know that there's a room right behind the front desk. This room is typically empty with a table here. There are places, plenty of places within the township that if someone simply says, can I go there and do this? Again, in my experience, the township attempts to accommodate those people as best they can. There are certain categories of plans that the township processes that we cannot provide to the public. The plans that show where the count room is in Parks Casino, the plans that show various aspects of the bank vault for Republic Bank, things that would deal with public safety in general. Again, certain categories are public, certain categories understandably are not. But to the extent that a fairly generic and germane subdivision plan was going to be heard by this board this evening, I don't know that there would be any impediment to that being provided and that being viewed in the normal course. Again, you process any number of these over the course of a month, a year, and it doesn't seem to have been a problem for anyone in the past. It seems unfortunate that you've had several experiences in that regard, but certainly doesn't seem to be the norm with the building and planning staff, with the young ladies who occupy or gentlemen for that matter, who may be manning the front desk. And again, as to taking documents out of the building, there is a process where a form is filled out. It is state law, it is township policy as well. Those forms get filled out and they get processed in the due course by staff who are assigned specifically to do those tasks. I think that pretty much covers everything that I heard, but if there's any other aspects of how township government processes plans and makes them available to the public, I'm certainly happy to weigh in. Ron, Russ, Quentin, you may have additional information to add to what I just did because you are on a daily basis closer to it than I am, but again, I'm speaking largely in my experience in this building over the last 25 years.
I just have one question, I guess, for the mayor or maybe Ms. McBreen here. If the conference room here or that conference room over there are basically unoccupied, are they available for the public to review information that, the township is providing?
Sure they are.
Absolutely.
It's their room.
And we have other places we could go. There's plenty of places. It's your room.
Okay,
That's not my experience at all.
so can we just maybe just
May I
separately
add-
address that, make
may
sure
I
that
add
everybody at the front desk knows that, we can use these
May I
facilities
add
for public?
something to this? Tomorrow, I will make sure that everybody is questioned on what you said, and I will make sure that, I want to hear what happened on their side, if there's another side, and if there's something to be corrected, I assure you it will be corrected.
So, okay, thank you. That's, I can't ask more than that.
That will be done tomorrow, I guarantee you.
So if I want to, I think I understand what you're saying, but I just want to be clear on this, that if I come here and like I did today, and there's a packet of information for this hearing, whatever, meeting, and I want to get a copy of it so I can take it home and study it and make notes and such, which I was forbidden to do today, are you saying that I need to file a freedom of information request to get those papers? So because there's no way that's going to happen in 3 days, which is how long I had to, between I get my notice that this hearing is going to happen and the meeting, so.
You have to fill out a right-to-know request, yes. Whether that right-to-know request, if it's for a single sheet of paper or a stack of 6 or 8 sheets of paper that you happen to have right there, is something that can be processed by that particular employee at that particular moment. Again, that's something that's outside the purview of my knowledge on how the department works. Understand that these employees, under the right-to-know law, the township receives multiple requests on a daily basis for any number of documents, and they are dealt with in the order that they are received, and some of them are grand in scope and some of them are fairly pedestrian. All of that being said, I don't know if the employee can otherwise run what you're talking about through a copier and do that at that point in time. I'm sure he or she would. Again, it's not, but again, this is a community of 60,000 plus people, all of whom are demanding things of the township, all of whom are well, I apologize if
That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm asking. You're answering a question I didn't answer. I had the paper in my hand, probably maybe, I don't know, I didn't count them, but maybe 10 pages. There was nobody around, like she wasn't answering a bunch of questions from a bunch of people. It was just the one secretary sitting there. There was nobody else around. There was a copy machine right behind her. She didn't say to me, yeah, I can't copy it. I don't have time to copy that right now. You have to pay for the copies. It was, you are not allowed to have a copy of this. So that's the thing, like, well, I need a copy of it. I stood.
Check into it tomorrow and make sure, maybe she's misinformed and made a mistake, so.
Okay.
So we'll have to check that tomorrow.
Okay.
It sounds to me like she told you the wrong thing, but I mean, she should have advised you otherwise of what to do, if she couldn't do it right away.
I guess one last question. So if I understand this correctly with council and zoning, so.
Let me follow up with this, please. I will find out, this is the first time this ever came up. We'll find out the employees. I know that employees not going to be able to just get out papers to anybody that comes in and asks for papers. They would jeopardize themselves and the township and their jobs. They would you just don't hand out papers. We have to find out what happened there. If they could, if in the case that you had, you could have came down to the administration, walked down the hallway and say you wanted to see the mayor or somebody in administration down there, and we could have handled that. I think that you wouldn't have got this back and forth with employees. But employees have to be very careful what they do also. So we have to make sure we tell them what they're allowed to give and what they're not.
Okay, well, I guess I would include in that then.
Which is why we have a right-to-know process where a form is submitted and it's reviewed by the appropriate individuals. Also, documents, in certain cases, as I said, certain documents related to certain pending categories of pending applications are not public records and therefore are not given out to the public because they're not public records. They're allowed to be viewed by the public, but they're not public records that are otherwise leave the building. And it's not for the employee who's working the front desk to make that determination, which is why we have a right-to-know process, so that the paperwork that's requested is brought in, it's reviewed by the appropriate management or, the person at the appropriate level. In some cases, those are sent over to my office for review for a legal review. before documents are
I already have the
released.
right to know, and the reason I have the right to know, and I can prove that, is she handed me the papers today. And she said, I could take pictures of it with my phone. So I have a right to know, or she thinks I have a right to know because she handed me the papers. It's not really a right to know, it's a right to copy and take home so I can read it.
You can play semantics, but the policy is the policy and the law is the law.
So we'll find out tomorrow what happened, and we'll try to get a resolution for it.
Okay.
You have, Debbie, has your contact information, so we can get a hold of you?
What do you need there?
Can you do it on the side?
Sure.
Can I go next?
Yes, sir. If you can identify yourself and then.
Andrew Nichevsky, 4939 Neshaminy Boulevard. I'd like to comment about zoning. We went to a zoning meeting, and all the plans were on the website. The next zoning meeting, which was a continuance, the same plans were on the website, but the man came to the to the zoning board with all new plans. The question is, if he came, this is Tri-State Engineering, came with a disc to the township, why wasn't it put on the website? I was told it was just a continuance of the original plans, which is kind of weird because 4 individual lots with 4 houses with their dimensions were being shown. The man stood here with the tripod and a big sketch of everything. We came to the meeting, 5 minutes before the meeting is when we actually got to see these plans. Now, my question to you is that standard practice to have plans, because it's a continuance, not put on the website? Anybody know?
Well, he brought new plans with him to the other zoning here, which we questioned him about tonight, and he didn't bring it.
But you're asking questions about zoning.
Well, no, I'm asking about the website.
Zoning is separate.
Okay, well, someone should have updated the website, yes, so.
Well, according to the zoning board, they don't have to because it was a continuance of the existing.
Again, zoning is a separate quasi-judicial board. It has nothing to do with this board. Those questions will have to be asked of the zoning board. We do not.
They have an attorney there too.
We do not speak for the zoning hearing board. We cannot speak for the zoning.
I understand
hearing
all
board.
that.
So if you want to ask a question, please go to the zoning hearing board and ask them.
They don't have a public comment area.
They, a what?
Public comment.
At the end of their meeting, they don't have public comment?
Do they? I don't think so.
Again, you're asking us questions about zoning hearing that has nothing to do with us.
Okay, back to the township council meetings.
Okay.
Why weren't these plans or any plans put on this evening's agenda? And if they were put on this evening agenda, would they have shown the updated blueprints?
Did we tell them that we're not going to hear the hearing?
No,
because
that's
we didn't
besides
have
the
to?
point. I'm
No,
just
it's not.
asking
No,
about,
it's not.
in general. I'm not
we-
asking about Acosta. I'm just asking in general.
There were no blueprints submitted to council. And that was one of the points that I made during the hearing, is
Right,
that there were
because-
no plans submitted to us for review as part of the hearing tonight.
But there was no plans anywhere on the website.
He answered that when I had asked him that, and he was an attorney filling in, and he said, I'm sorry, I didn't bring them with me. Now, if you didn't hear that,
Now
that's
I
what he
heard
did
that.
say.
Well,
My question to
you did
you
hear
is
that.
why there was,
I understand your question. I think what he's trying to ask, and it's pending, I've got the same question. The township website, when the agenda is posted for meetings for the zoning hearing board or the planning commission, provide a hyperlink to the plans that will be discussed at that meeting.
Right.
That is not done on our council agendas. And is that something that we can provide to the public for access, or is that something that we are prohibited from doing?
I think Mr. Polari brought that up, but he said that it shouldn't be heard if it's not.
No, just, not just for this,
He
in
wants to know
general,
whether the
every
council
item.
can upload plans ahead of time, ahead of our council meetings for the public in reference to on the website.
Is that what you're
But
saying?
Yes.
that's already done, though. It's being done with.
It's
planning
done on
and
zoning, it's done
Yeah.
on planning commission.
Okay,
It's
well,
not done on council.
The mayor have to look into whether we can do that.
Let's
I mean,
look into
that's
it.
Something we
Okay.
have to do. But
Is that where you're going?
The attorney told us tonight that he submitted plans to, new plans to the township, that the township had them. That was the first time we were aware ourselves. It wasn't in our packet, so we weren't aware. So should, if someone who got new plans uploaded them on the website, I guess they should, yeah. So the mayor's gonna have to look into that too, I would assume.
Okay,
We'll have to see what,
well, that's my whole point.
Okay.
A lot of
So
people
we're gonna
don't
look
have,
into it for council.
don't have the opportunity to drive to the township building during the daytime and look at the plans. That's,
okay, well, whatever we
Yep.
can.
but you go on a website,
I
bam.
understand. Whatever can be put on the website should be put on the website.
And I will say, one of the reasons we require now an electronic version of plans to be presented at meetings is so that when it's rebroadcast at home, it comes up on the screen as well. So if you want to download the meetings, they're available on the township's YouTube channel. You can see the meeting, and it will display the plans that are being discussed at the time as well.
Okay?
You
And
made a good point, and the mayor's gonna look into it, and we're gonna see if we can do that for all our plans for our meetings.
Yeah.
Okay?
21st century or
All right,
22nd.
okay, well, congratulations.
Okay, now my second problem is the speakers here. Whenever I go on YouTube, Mr. Pileggi, I can never understand what you're saying.
Hilarious.
It's hilarious.
Oh,
And only 3 microphones can be turned on at a time, or 5. If everybody's turned on, I can't turn mine on, and that's sometimes.
is it on now?
It's not.
1, 2, 3, oh, almost.
I turned mine on.
There was 5 on, so. that's why I
Okay,
turned
well,
mine on.
if I sit in the back of the room, I really can't hear anything. You have to actually come to the front. I had that old man's disease, you know, where you need a hearing aid.
Should be me. I'm sitting up here like that.
What'd you say?
I sit up here and I can't hear. You said the old man syndrome.
Yeah, I know. That was a
Talking
joke
about me.
because a lot of times you say, what'd you say?
Pardon me?
Yeah, exactly. And finally, let's say there's 65,000 people in this township.
64.5.
Okay.
Let's be exact, 64.5, okay?
All right. I've been in this township since 66, 67. Why is it whenever I call the mayor's office, I can never get the chance to talk to the mayor?
That's not true. That is bull. I'm sorry. There isn't anybody doesn't get through to me. Anybody. So please don't say that.
Well,
I mean, if you're out here just to try to destroy
no,
something.
they didn't do it today.
Don't say that, because that's not true.
Okay, so the
And I call everybody back when there's a
Take your-
phone number left.
Give Debbie your name and number, and we'll have the mayor call
And
you.
email
Set up-
everybody back when there's an email.
Set up a meeting with you. You've been trying since 1967?
Well, Mrs. Barnes let me talk to him one time.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so you did get the talk.
One time.
Okay, but you did, you just said you didn't.
Dad, I'm
You
not
never forget, but you did, so.
So I made a mistake.
Okay, so.
I'm an old man with bad hearing.
Persistence overcomes resistance. But the mayor will make every effort to get back to you and meet with you, I guess.
All right, so my understanding
Speak for
is,
me, Mr. President,
What's that? Okay, I'm sorry. Well, I thought you said, I was just repeating what you said.
I get back to everybody.
Okay.
I'm here, and on weekends too, if they call. I'm in here on the weekends. I'm not going to sit and listen to I don't get back to somebody, because that is absolutely not true.
Okay, so you got another point? You have another point?
no, that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Other than, if you want to hear about the back room.
Thank you.
Have a nice day, thank you.
Bring these plans up here to pull that crap.
I know, exactly.
Good evening. Lawrence Grace, 918 Tennis Avenue. This is my wife, Donna
Yeah,
Grace.
Donna Grace, 918 Tennis Avenue. Hi.
Good evening. Tonight I came to comment on the problems of my residents in my neighborhood. This concerns Newcastle Building Products.
No, I can't hear me.
Yes, Newcastle Building Products. Is this microphone on? Okay. Newcastle Building Products. It was the former Andalusia Supply. 7 months ago, I had filed complaints and wrote to the council members. And to date, nothing has changed. Where I live, if you walk out into my backyard, I look at, well, the ceiling's 2 stories. I look at 1- and 2-story, well, plastic storage, just stacked, 100 feet deep, 400 feet across the whole thing. I don't really know where to go with this. I filed complaints. I've wrote every one of you a 5-page letter. Every day I go home, I'm listening to construction site noise. This side yard of my property is being torn up. Yearly, this year was $1,600. Last year was $1,200. Prior to that, this place has been complained about by the neighborhood. I'm a little disheartened because I watched the last meeting and Ed brought up about it, and you said, I believe they're reaching.
Well, I got a report after you sent the letters and stuff that they were out there talking to you, and I was told that they were working out a resolution between you and
Nothing has changed. Absolutely nothing.
no one ever talked to you after you sent those letters.
I spoke to Ken.
Did you go down there?
No. I spoke to Ken briefly.
Well, Ken told me you went down there and spoke to you.
Within speaking to Ken, we discussed some of the GC zoning laws as they apply down there, and what exactly that property was, and grandfathering and things like this. When I moved in there, in my rear lot, that was owned, I go in my rear, the lot attached to it was owned by J.J. Matthias. I don't know if any of you are familiar with him. Antique store, especially Mr. Kisselback. Didn't you have a Kiss photography right down a block away?
I do.
Yeah.
Thanks for opening and losing, I remember.
Okay. So I bought this home 30 years ago. And I bought it on the principle that rear lot was empty. Nothing like it is today. J.J. Matthias moved out of there in 2003. When then it was purchased by, you have J.J.'s property, the very next property was Andalusia Supply. That was Horlacher and B, if you recall, the prior owners to the ones that currently. The way they ran their operation was the warehouse took up most of the property. There was some parking in the front and like a side drive to get to the garage doors. They kept all their storage inside. There was no fences. There were no concrete on this property. It was then purchased by Andalusia Supply. Andalusia Supply purchased 863 Bristol Pike, and that would be J.J. Matthias. They then proceeded, and I didn't know because I'm not a study of your zoning laws, and you would think people would never do some of the stuff they did. They proceeded to concrete the whole property, 100% impervious. After that, fences went in. After that, storage started appearing, till I guess around in 2010, when I was receiving a lot of property damage, large roofs were built with no permits, all to find out that all that concrete, and between the two properties, I gotta say, that's about 35 to 40,000 square feet of concrete on a hill that goes right into Mitchell Avenue, 6 homes below. So when it was complained about then, a petition was taken. 3 of you were on the council at the time. Nothing. Talk to your zoning department or your building and planning. Nothing. Nothing was done. Took property damage on the side, back then as well as now. I have a copy of the prior petition. I can't take it anymore. It's year after year with the thousands of dollars of stuff. I can't do it. Within talking to the neighborhood, all those trucks are coming down all the side streets. They're ripping utility lines off the houses, car mirrors, and the corners of the properties are being damaged. Police reports are filed. They tell you got to get the license number. The guy up the street sees the shingle truck, doesn't have a license number, everybody's at work. Much like me, I come home and my property's all torn up. This isn't sustainable. And this isn't what I bought a house to live next to. The zoning for GC, there is no outside storage. I don't, for you to expect me to pay tax money to a building and planning department to uphold the zoning laws and then do nothing, am I supposed to then reach in my pocket and start paying lawyers? It doesn't make any sense.
What did you do after Ken spoke to you? What did you do after that?
I'm not getting anywhere really with Ken because Ken's telling me he's new, he doesn't understand. Everything's documented. As you know, I wrote all you.
How long ago was that?
7 months ago.
That's why I didn't hear from you 7 months.
7 months ago, 6 months ago, I wrote the council. 5 months ago, you had a meeting. Mr. Mayor stated that all these problems were being addressed. I had great faith in that. And then I had a chance to see the last meeting where you stated resolution. I'm like, what?
I said, I spoke to Ken, and he said
Okay.
he spoke to you, and he advised you what you had to do, and he said that they were working towards a resolution. So I haven't heard anything, letter or email or call, in 7 months, so I just assumed that it was worked out.
Okay. I mean, as it stands, I couldn't sell my property. I really don't believe I could. Every window in my rear of my house, I'm looking at, it looks like the Hoarders show, but gigantic. It's just stuff stacked, stacked. The noise is incredible. It's a construction site. You have reverse beepers operating at twice the decibels of the allowable GC zoning. You have pallets slamming. I have a 20-yard dumpster for a year jammed up against my rear fence. That is nothing but lunches and smells and everything. I have tractor trailers, sometimes triple, idling. This is on a Saturday morning when I'm trying to get the lawn cut and all the filthy fuel oils blowing across my property. None of this is GC zoning. And within not knowing what to do, I hired a zoning and land use lawyer to advise me of my rights. He says this is ridiculous. He cannot understand how any of what is going on over there applies to GC zoning, especially when there would be no grandfathering on 863. And prior, Andalusia's original business, there were no fences. They had 2 small box trucks, Horlacker and Big. They kept all their storage, and they even parked their trucks inside at the end of the day. If any storage was out there, I'm pretty sure it would have got carried off. And then to find out, all the other neighbors are experiencing a lot of problems. The yards are so jammed up, they have no employee parking. They use the pedestrian right of way to park. So now we're coming around the corner. All the trucks are jamming up Highland Avenue. I gave Ken 20 photos after you all put up them signs, said no parking. 20 photos of 2, 3 deep tractor trailers jamming it up. Forklifts in the street unloading the trucks. You're standing in line to get up the street. All their employees, when they can't park in the pedestrian right away, they go down Mitchell Avenue and park in front of all the homes. I'm not sure how you think anybody can really live like this. I can't come home every day and run out to see if there's property damage. The days I am home, I want to be able to open my window and not hear all that noise. I don't want to look out the window and see all this. I go out to my car, and 2 to 3 feet away, the storage is 1 story high. The forklift driver's there. I mean, literally, from me to you, I'm looking at the forklift driver, and then I see a cube start rising above my fence. This is crazy. They have a scissor hoist that goes, a scissor thing that lifts the storage 2 stories high. If you look at their roof line, the storage is stacked 2 stories high. How? What size fence do I buy? I don't. Well, anyway, within talking to the other neighbors, we obtained a petition asking you to uphold. This is from 40 residents that surround there. So,
Yeah. Okay, so this is the petition to Bensalem Township to uphold the zoning laws. Ongoing operations at Newcastle Building Products located at 850 Highland Avenue and 863 Bristol Pike are threatening financial, health, and safety of surrounding residents in the following ways. Adverse conditions on Highland Avenue are common. Parked tractor trailers 2 or 3 deep, blocking lanes with forklifts offloading these trucks can often be viewed. This is creating safety issues for motorists and pedestrians in our neighborhood. The property's land and fence lines are stacked with well over 20,000 square foot of 1 and 2 story high outdoor storage, which makes for eyesore views. This detracting from the property value of our neighborhood. In addition, properties closest are subject to intermittent vector conditions from plastic-wrapped storage that hold ponding water, having mosquito and rodent populations as stated by Bucks County Board of Health Vector Control Section 3.1, 3.2. Newcastle's outdoor operations are 6 days a week. Noise levels are continuous from truck and forklifts, reverse beepers, pallet slamming, trucks loading and unloading, and so on. Properties closest on Tennis and Mitchell Avenues are experiencing noise levels that are horrendous and are comparable to a construction site. These are well above the allowable noise levels for a GC-zoned district. Because the properties are being used in this manner, it causes additional problems, as the surrounding streets are too small to support tractor trailers coming and going. Property damage is being caused. Damages to lawns, fences, utility lines, and cars on Highland, Walnut, Locust, and Edgewood Avenues have all been noted. Property owners on Mitchell have also noted water flows coming from Newcastle and is affecting their homes. This is stemming from approximately 35,000 square foot of concrete slabs. They were installed with no permits and no stormwater management. Newcastle resides on property zoned GC, General Commercial. They are not in compliance and are in violation of zoning ordinances that govern GC General Commercial districts. Because they are not in compliance, the surrounding residents are left to bear a brunt of financial, health, and safety threats. Despite past and ongoing complaints to township, conditions have not changed. As portions of our property taxes go to fund a building and planning department, one would think enforcement would be fairly assured and upheld by township to protect the general welfare of its people. And then we note the general zoning ordinance that are not in compliance. Just an example, section 232 to 308, storage within a completely enclosed building with permitted use.
These were all cited by...
And there are about 4 pages of signatures.
Okay, well, you can get us a copy of that, and then we're just going to have, Mayor, we'll have to get a report of what's happening down there and where we're at as far as fighting against.
Is there any way of getting a meeting with everybody?
The residents.
I do it in the evening. It doesn't
All
have
the
to be-
residents, or?
Anybody that
All
wanted
the
to come,
neighbors
yeah.
and all, we can get and bring everybody together, and we can then have the zoning officer there, and we can work on it from
Yeah,
there.
that would be wonderful.
And get a plan.
that works better with a whole bunch of people.
Your engineer was actually down there at one point.
Well, I know, I just had him come up here and talk to me for a couple of minutes, but he
Yeah,
doesn't
I mean,
know
the
what-
tractor trailers come around there.
Yeah,
The
I'd
streets
wait
are-
for you down there.
Do you
I know
live-
we put the stop signs there to at least keep them off
The
your
parking,
lawn.
yes.
Did it work?
There's two.
Well, he's saying they're parking there
All
anyway.
the photos I gave Ken are all trucks all jammed in front of it.
Well, then the police ought to come down and ticket them.
Well, they do, and I would gamble between me and the neighbors, there's been over 100 police calls.
Mr.
And I just, at this point, it's just a horrible.
Now, do you live
waste.
next to Mr. Mathias's property, or
My property
Is on-
borders,
tennis?
I'm on Tennis,
Yeah.
Highland Avenue. I actually have two properties. I have a small,
You live in the
empty lot.
Staples' old house? Staples?
Yeah, yes,
Okay.
which I bought off the bank.
Okay.
It was abandoned when I bought it.
I know where it is, yeah.
Mr. Paizo,
150 feet of my rear yard. Oh, I'm on a district
But I
boundary
thought there was
line,
another
too.
property behind you and then Mr. Mathias's property, but maybe I'm wrong.
I'm on a district boundary line between commercial, that's the other thing. There should be a buffer yard and 75 feet, according
Yeah,
to.
there was no zoning back then.
Yeah, that was bought in 2003, well under our current zoning.
Yeah, it had to be recent, because I remember Mr. Mathias has been out of there for
Yeah.
15 years, 20 years.
They're just, it's a complete misuse of the land. That doesn't belong there, not close to residential
Can
properties.
we get that meeting together?
Yes.
Who will we contact?
Believe me.
You probably, right?
Okay, well, give Debbie a copy so she can make copies for us.
I may just.
Oh, okay, good, thanks. Okay, thank you, sir.
Mr. Grace, just to reiterate the mayor's point, do you have the contact information for the 40 residents that signed this petition? Because he's suggesting a meeting, so we just want to make sure that you can reach out to these individuals.
I can go around this weekend and talk to them.
Okay.
Do I have everybody's phone number?
Okay.
But I know enough people back there.
Yeah, obviously, I don't think you're going to be able to get a meeting with all of them, but I think what you should probably do is reach out to the mayor's office, just pick a date, schedule a time, and then just communicate that to everyone that's on this petition. Whoever can come would be great.
Okay, and where would that meeting take place?
We're here.
Okay.
We'll have it here.
Yeah.
Okay, that would be fine.
We have plenty of rooms, different rooms.
Yeah, and hopefully you get some resolution to this, but I was told they put parking signs out there, and they addressed the guy's height that he had next to your property, and you guys worked it out. That's what Ken told me, so, I mean, but we'll have to get at this again and make sure something's done.
Yeah,
They need to be good neighbors at least.
yeah, okay.
See what we can do. Okay, well, thanks for coming out.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Alan, good evening, how are you?
Alan Windsor, 3232 Azalea Avenue.
thank you for your service, sir.
Thank you. I try to sit here and understand everything about this zoning for that cost of development. If they're allowing zoning that is undersized, what is good is the ordinance if they're gonna make two undersized units here? Well, two of them are undersized, from what I understand. Lot 2 and Lot 4 or something like that.
Right.
If the zoning ordinance says you have to have so many feet, let's make it that many feet, and if they come in with the thing underneath it, you deny them. I mean, I don't understand how the zoning board can get away with that. This is the law, and they're bisecting the law. They're allowed to do that.
You have to ask that.
Well, that's the zoning.
I
board.
have asked that.
I
At
know.
the zoning hearing board,
I
I've
know,
asked
but
that.
That's they.
What was their
they go for-
response?
They go
I
for-
didn't get one.
But they go for variance, I mean,
I'm
I know,
on
but some areas are 75 by 100, right?
I
So-
understand that.
So that's
Different
7,500.
residential and things have different.
That's 7,500
Yes,
square
I
feet.
understand
So
that.
this is 20,000, which is a big lot, but, I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
But they give variances, that's what they do, so it's not.
Being on the
All over the
environmental
state of
board.
Pennsylvania, they do the same thing, they give variances for.
Right.
Okay, so.
But for zoning, it should never happen. It's the law. You make the
Well,
law.
yeah.
My understanding
it's
is
the
that they have to
guideline, yeah.
prove that there's some kind of hardship reason why they
You're
can't.
building
do
a
this.
house, there's no hardship.
I'm just saying
You're
that
building a house.
they
All
have to
right.
provide one. I did not see one provided.
I'm on the environmental board, and when I saw these plans for this, there was no stormwater. How are we supposed to do our job if there's no stormwater plans for us to show, even for a preliminary or a final subdivision? You have to be able to see where the water's going
Well, that's
in
why
order for them to be able to.
that's why we didn't hear it tonight, but.
It should have been,
That's what
it
we
should
said.
have been in there. It was one of the waivers they were requesting.
Well,
and it's one of the reasons
Their
that we
excuse was it was
kicked it
just a
back to them.
subdivision tonight, Alan?
Yes.
And we didn't buy that, so they're gonna come back with plans, so we'll know what exactly what's
Right,
being done.
but this should be done, like, when they
Prior
submit the
to-
plans to the planning board should say, hey, you don't have anything here to show us what you're doing.
Okay, yeah, okay.
I mean, this is,
Yeah,
when
they
I
should've
saw
bought
the
a-
plans,
They should have bought a thumb drive too, but they didn't. so
right,
we
when I saw the
too.
plans, it said single-family dwellings, and it said, and they showed nowhere where the water's gonna run or anything like that. I can't do my job on the environmental board if I don't see the plans. Do I have to wait for development for this to happen?
Well, we told them they're gonna have to come in front of us with everything, so that's.
They
what
withdrew their
they're supposed to do.
application.
Right.
And they'll have to resubmit it with everything in there, at which
I
point it should go back in
I
front of the
understand that,
Environmental Advisory Board.
but when the planning board sees the plans, don't they have the,
I don't think it went through planning, because it wasn't a subdivision, they just went to zoning for a variance.
Planning is an advisory board, they're not a.
I'm talking about the building and planning.
Oh, building and planning, I'm sorry, I thought you meant the planning commission.
Shouldn't they be advising the developer that they need this stuff?
Well, technically, if they weren't going for the subdivision, if they were only going for subdivision of the lots, not actually to build houses yet. That's what that.
Well, that's what subdividing the houses is for.
They are told that they need that.
Yeah.
Okay, so they should have been denied at zoning or the
Well, they
building and planning.
requested a waiver. They recognized they didn't meet the requirement. They were requesting a waiver, which only council can give. That's what they were
I
trying to get
understand that.
tonight.
I understand
And
that.
they went to zoning because they knew that they couldn't do the lot, so they went, asked for a variance, and zoning gave a variance. We don't control zoning. It's a separate quasi-judicial board. We can't tell zoning what to do and
Well,
what not to do.
well, then that tells me we need new zoning people. If they're not following the ordinances that the township puts forward, and they're giving variances for anything here or there, you have the wrong people on zoning. I'm talking to the mayor now. We need new people on zoning, sir.
The job of the zoning hearing board, just like this council when it comes to the subdivision and land development ordinance, is to take each application on its merits. The job of this council when they receive a waiver request, because the subdivision land development ordinances are also the law. And
That's
if
right.
it says something has to be something,
Well-
it is nonetheless within the discretion of these five
But
individuals.
we vote for these
Yeah,
people.
I'm speaking. It is within the discretion of these five individuals to hear, based on the evidence that is presented to them, as to a particular piece of ground and the circumstances that attach to that piece of ground. The size, the location, the shape, what it is that the property owner wants to do, what it is that the township wants to see done with the property. Those all come into play when making a decision whether or not to grant the waiver, as well as whether it is significant or de minimis. The same standards apply to the zoning hearing board. If one of your neighbors wants to come in and put on a deck, and none of his neighbors have a problem, but because of the size, shape, or whatever of the lot, they need a variance for a foot of land from the side of the house, and everybody's in agreement that they should happen. Under your theory, the answer is no, sorry, you can't do it. Because the law says this, and that's that, and there can be no deviation. The law specifically vests the zoning hearing board with the power, specifically vests the council with the power to say, okay, you get to adopt the laws, and you also get to determine in those instances where a variation is required. And the zoning laws in this state are quite clear that one standard applies to use variances and a lesser standard applies to dimensional variances. And so in the case of the lots that Mr. Costa brought in, for whatever reason, if the zoning hearing board in its wisdom felt that where a 20,000 square foot lot is required, but he's providing 18,000, under whatever set of circumstances that are presented to them, they get to make that decision based on the evidence that is presented to them. That's the law. That is their job.
So their job is not to follow the ordinance.
No, their job is to see what the ordinance is, apply the ordinance, and where someone is asking for them to grant a variance from that ordinance, to see what the circumstances are that surround that request and make a determination whether that request should be granted or not.
You just
And in certain
read my case.
cases, if a variance should be granted, to apply certain conditions to that variance where, yes, we'll allow you to deviate from the legal standard as long as you do X, Y, and Z. Those sorts of things happen all the time.
No, and you just gave me the right answer, that these people should not be on it if they don't want to follow the law.
Okay, all right.
That's
Anything
the
else,
law.
Alan, anything else?
Yeah, I want to thank the township, especially the mayor, for getting that old flower place down there on Old Lincoln Highway and Bristol Road. It looks beautiful now. It looks beautiful. I want to thank you guys for doing such a good job and getting it.
Got the other part down.
You got- yes,
The
you-
old building
Yeah.
across the street.
Yes, you did. Yep. So that's all I have tonight.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks, Alan, thanks for coming out. Okay. Okay, we'll close public comment. Is there any other business? Ron, you have anything? Deb, you okay? Mr. Paizo, do you have anything else to add, or you okay?
Nothing further for this evening. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, do you have anything you would like to add?
Just that we celebrated Veterans Day yesterday, and certainly all weekend. We started last week in the schools, and it was certainly a tribute, and I know you're a veteran, so Jesse, it's important that we continue.
You always
Yes.
forget me. Hey, I swear, he forgets me every
I
time.
know. You're a Navy guy, man.
Well,
You're
we'll see.
Navy. Oh, you're Navy too, Anyway, to all of our veterans out there, and we have to always thank them, and we had some great events and to honor them. And we're all here today because of them guys, and we owe a great deal to them. So we had a great weekend in Bensalem honoring our veterans.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Sloan?
I'll just reiterate that. I want to say thank you to all the veterans out
I know you
there,
do.
including Mr. Kisselback. And, it's a pretty remarkable thing that today in the United States, our military is 100% volunteers. And I know it wasn't always that way, but it's something certainly to celebrate and appreciate those people now. So.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Polari, do you have anything?
Yeah, I'd also like to put my microphone on for you, okay? Since there's not 5 on. I'd like to thank Parks Casino, too, being such a good community member. They put on the event for the veterans, which I thought was a fantastic event, honoring them for their service and having our county board had the people there for services and things that are available for the veterans. And they're the things that we should be doing as a government every day of the week. So I know the mayor does a good job with it. We try and chip in wherever we can, but our veterans deserve everything they're getting and probably more than what they're getting.
Go. The Flyers won 5 straight.
Mr. Kisselback, do you have anything to add?
No.
Nothing about the Navy or anything?
Well, my son's in Afghanistan, if you want to hear that, so.
Mr. Takmasian, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, just 2 points of business. But first and foremost, I also wanted to reiterate everything that everybody said up here, including the mayor. Thank you for your service to all the veterans out there. Councilman Sloan, Councilman Kisselback's son, my father in the audience. So thank you very much. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. Okay. 2 items real quick. Mr. Paizo, I had asked an update previously for the property on Colmar. I know that's part of the RDA at this point. I'm just hoping to get an update where we stand with that.
I unfortunately don't have an answer for you. I'll follow up with the RDA tomorrow and see, at this point, it is in their hands as far as them taking the next step to have the property declared blighted and file the eminent domain papers. That may have already taken place. I don't know. But we'll find out, and I'll call you or email you with an update.
Great, thank you very much. And the point there is that we had a big win with it going in front of planning, and that being approved, so I just don't want to lose visibility of that.
No, not at all. But
Thank you.
the township's done everything that it needed to do. It's now handed over to the RDA. They generally move in pretty deliberate fashion, but again, as we emphasize to the public during the process, it is a process, and it's a very specific process, because at the end of the day, we're going to be divesting these individuals of their property. Obviously for good reason, but nonetheless, we're going to be, we, government, are going to be taking their property from them. So, but again, it's, the township has handed the ball over to the redevelopment authority, and I'll follow up with them to see where they are and get in touch with you tomorrow.
Second point of business real quick. I know over the past several months, we approved the traffic light made for those improvements to be made. Have all of them been completed? I know I had asked I know I had asked for one at the intersection of Galloway and Humeville, so I wasn't sure if that's still slated to be done.
That's going to be done with the Humeville Road all the way. Signals are being done over.
Okay.
If you remember, we got a grant.
Yeah, I thought that was the fall, though, this year. Maybe I... All right.
I hate to say that, but no, it's on its way.
Okay.
And I actually we're working on another grant on Bristol Pike. To do
Great.
the same thing along with the signals on Bristol Pike.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, one, I would like to, thank all our veterans on Veterans Day, and also like to mention that George Flacco passed away, who was the chairman of our Economic Development Corporation. His services are tomorrow. I believe he lived in the township for 50 years and was a very active member of my parish at St. Ephraim's and also with the township, and it's certainly sorry to see him pass. Also today, I had a long day today because my godmother, Frances Jarvis, passed away, and her services were today. She was a 91-year resident of the township. She started the phone company, her and her mother, across from Thomason's Funeral Home when they were putting switches in. She unfortunately passed away today. Her son was an All-American running back at West Point and scored 3 touchdowns in the Army-Navy game in 1968. So go Army, beat Navy. All right, so with that, we'll see you. That's right. We'll see you, and my nephew graduated from West Point also. So we'll see you December 16th. All right,
Motion we adjourn.
Adjourn. Second.
Second.
Thank you.